You walk into the room for a shift handover or a site briefing. Before anyone says a word, you have already scanned every person present. You identified who is frustrated by the previous shift and who is about to lose their patience with the new supervisor. You quietly adjusted your own communication style to manage the tension you see in the room. Nobody asked you to perform this task. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, this adjustment is not a skill you chose to develop. It is a reflex your nervous system built before you reached adulthood. You grew up across two cultural worlds that never fully claimed you. This lack of a specific generational home turned you into a permanent interpreter. There's a name for what this costs you at work. Most management seminars ignore this reality. The exhaustion you carry home does not come from physical labor or technical requirements. It comes from the social performance you run underneath your actual tasks. This effort is invisible, constant, and unrecorded in your job description. A viewer recently wrote about the mental effort of explaining modern software to Gen X coworkers while justifying traditional records to millennial supervisors. He faces this conflict every day. This is not a simple communication problem. This is simultaneous interpretation. Professional translators at the United Nations work in short shifts because the mental load is so high. You perform this task for 8 to 12 hours a day without the title or hazard pay. Psychologists call this generational code switching. It is the automatic shift in your vocabulary and tone depending on who is in the room. This happens in every industry. In a hospital, a Xennial nurse manages the blunt instructions of a veteran doctor and the emotional needs of a new intern. On a construction site, a lead rephrases a foreman's criticism so an apprentice does not quit. When you speak with Gen X colleagues, you adapt. These individuals often learn their roles before digital communication existed. They often consider asking for help a character flaw. They communicate warmth through competence rather than verbal affirmation. With them, you use shorter sentences and provide no unnecessary context. You recognize that for this group, the work defines the relationship. Then you turn to speak with your millennial colleagues. These individuals require the purpose of a task before they begin. They process thoughts out loud. They often interpret silence as a sign of hostility. You shift your style again. You validate their contributions before you make a request. You provide emotional context before you present a practical requirement. You eventually return to your station and wonder why you feel so tired. This is a structural depletion that sleep does not resolve. This is the translator tax. Workplace seminars never explain the origin of this behavior. This did not emerge because you are naturally flexible. That is a label for the result of your labor. This happened because of your birth year. Developmental psychologists identify the years between 12 and 22 as the primary period for identity formation. During this time, the brain wires its baseline assumptions about authority and communication. Whatever framework your nervous system absorbed then became your default mode. If you are a Xennial, your identity formed during the transition from an analog world to a digital one. You spent your childhood in a world of self-reliance. You learned that results were the only valid currency. You absorbed these habits in your work ethic. You understood that authority was hierarchical and often silent. Then the world changed as you entered the workforce. Communication became instant, and emotional awareness became a requirement. Millennials reached adulthood during the rise of the internet. Their framework is based on connection and emotional transparency. They expect frequent feedback. To them, relational warmth at work is a baseline requirement. You are the only group that lived in both worlds during your formative years. You became fluent in two different styles by necessity. You understand the logic of the old world and the values of the new one. Your birth window forced this adaptation on you. Every workplace has handed you an unpaid second job. Economists use the term invisible work for essential tasks that keep a team from falling apart. These tasks never appear on a performance review and are not compensated. They happen because someone performs them quietly. For Xennials, this invisible work is usually translation. You rephrase a blunt command so a younger worker does not feel insulted. You explain to an older supervisor that a younger staff member's questions are a sign of engagement rather than disrespect. You act as a buffer between two sets of values. Research shows that employees placed involuntarily into mediating roles report significantly higher emotional exhaustion. You did not choose this role. It was forced upon you by your position in the generational timeline. You likely learned this behavior as a child. You were the child who assessed the mood of the adults in your house to stay safe or keep the peace. That survival reflex moved into your professional life. You became an expert at monitoring subtle signs of tension because you could not afford to ignore them. You became the mediator at work because you were already the mediator at home. Occupational psychologist Alicia Grandy calls this surface acting. You perform a social role that does not match your internal state to keep the job moving. This is not a form of dishonesty. It is a presentation layer that does not match your current feelings. This behavior is more depleting than genuine emotional expression. It draws continuously on your executive function without providing recovery. Psychologists call this suppressive regulation. You consciously hide your true reactions to maintain a stable environment for your team. This process requires significant self-control. It drains your glucose levels and reduces your ability to focus on complex tasks. You are fighting your own biology throughout every hour of your shift. This explains why you can handle a workplace crisis with composure, but feel hollow after a routine shift. In an emergency, you have one job. You solve the problem. During a normal shift, you satisfy the veteran lead who wants silence and support the junior team that wants acknowledgement. You manage the subtext of every conversation to ensure the crew stays together. By the end of the day, your brain is empty. You go home and say you are fine because you lack the energy to explain the weight you carried. This is the feeling that you are being used by people who do not even know they are using you. Research on boundary-spanning roles finds that the people who link different groups are the most important members of any team. This importance does not always result in a promotion. Instead, it determines whether a project succeeds or whether a crew stays together. The individual who translates is often the only reason a room functions effectively. You prevent expensive mistakes because you notice the small social cues that others ignore. While your coworkers focus only on physical tasks, you manage the human energy required to complete them. You provide the stability a team needs to function under pressure. This capacity is rare, specific, and very vital. The problem is not your skill. The problem is that you are performing high-level emotional labor for free. You have been told that your flexibility is just a nice personality trait. This is a lie. Your ability to speak both generational languages is a rare form of leadership. Stop viewing your exhaustion as a sign of weakness. View it as proof of your labor. You are performing an executive function that your coworkers cannot do. You understand the methods of the past and the expectations of the future. You exist between two worlds because both require your presence to communicate with each other. So if you feel this weight every Sunday night, leave a comment. Tell me about the conversation you had to manage this week on the job. I read every comment. And if you have reached this far, the next 2 videos on your screen will interest you. They provide a more thorough look at why Xennials have career grief with no closure, and the psychology of why you feel older than you are. I appreciate your time. You are doing more work than anyone realizes. Please know you matter.